Every land investor's dream is the coveted double closing, using the buyer's money to pay the seller and taking the profit with no money out of pocket. The primary mechanism for achieving this holy grail of investing is by locking up the property through an options contract. Sometimes, though, that simply isn't possible. If the seller won't agree to an options contract, that doesn't mean there aren't ways to substantially reduce or even eliminate the upfront need for capital. In this episode of the land.mba podcast, David and I are going to tell you about a rarely discussed method that allows you to buy properties while substantially reducing your upfront purchase costs. If there's one thing I've learned in my business career, it's that I don't have all the answers. Look, I'm an ambitious guy, and I like to make progress fast. The secret to achieving success fast is to harness the brain power of other people in the community. That's what the land.mba Smart Bar is all about. As veteran investor Jesse Marchand said, the Smart Bar gave me the motivation and knowledge I needed to push through the tough times and accelerate my path to success. Seven-figure investor Mitch Milam likes to say, there's one meeting each week that I never miss. It's the land.mba Smart Bar. It's like happy hour with my land investing buddies. I always learn something. So if you want to network with like-minded people, make new friends, learn heaps, get questions answered, answer questions for others, learn new strategies, get accountability, and overall get inspired while having a great time, check out the land.mba Smart Bar. For a short time, podcast listeners can get 20% off the annual plan, which comes to an insane $86 per month. Compare this to other programs which charge $250 a month or more. This is hands down the best deal you're going to find and the best way to invest in your success. So don't wait. Please go to land.mba/mastermind. That's land.mba/mastermind and use promo code podcast22 to join today. Hello, all you gorgeous entrepreneurial land investors. We are so honored that you chose to spend some time with us today. I'm Howard Zonder. This is my partner, David Van Steenkis, and this is the land.mba podcast. Before we continue, we just like to humbly ask, if you would, please like, subscribe, comment on our podcast. It really helps us in a lot of ways with the metrics. Also, if you're watching the video, whether it's on YouTube or Rumble, please like the video and click the bell or subscribe on Rumble. We really love Rumble. It's a really great viewing experience. And if we get above a certain number of subscribers, there are some real great benefits that will accrue to us, and it costs you absolutely nothing. So if you could do that, that would be absolutely wonderful. So what are we going to talk about today that is going to rock their world, David?
Oh, baby. How to minimize your capital outlay on your purchases, your acquisitions, and some other really good stuff, and actually potentially infinite ROI.
I think what we're going to talk about today could revolutionize your land business. Hopefully I have not oversold this. Look at the fact
revolutionary.
I am a revolutionary. I better watch out. The FBI might be knocking down my door any moment.
Yeah, especially when we promote Rumble.
Yeah, exactly.
The big middle finger to big tech.
Well, hey, the holy grail in land investing is what we call the double close. How do we sell the property literally the day we buy it? So we're virtually not out of pocket at all, and we just stick a bunch of profit into our pocket, thus giving us what we call infinite return on investment. That is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Happens every once in a while, doesn't happen all the time for a variety of reasons. Maybe you buy the property and there's a gap between when you buy it and when you sell it. Or maybe the seller just will not, if it doesn't find an option agreement a satisfactory solution to his problem, and he just wants to sell the property. These things happen. But is there another way to keep your upfront capital costs really low. Let's just say the property is a more expensive property. Let's say it's a 10, 20, 30, $50,000 property. Is there a way to keep your costs low in the absence of an option agreement? And the answer is, I'm going to give it away. Yes. What do we call that when we give away the movie?
A
What's
spoiler.
that? A
Spoiler
spoiler.
alert.
Spoiler alert. The answer is yes.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just about keeping your capital costs low, but it's about keeping your risk low
Mhm.
in some cases. Um, so let's talk about that other option then. It's not an option agreement. We're not paying cash. So what's the other option?
Well, again, as land investors, we are accustomed to the idea of selling properties with owner financing. But what about buying properties with owner financing? Now, in either case, the way we do it, let's say we're selling a property with owner financing, that whole concept probably is foreign to the person who's buying the property. In that sales process, you're educating them about how this could work and selling it as it is, an advantage to them because they don't have to pay it all at once. They can pay it over time. It's the same thing when you're buying a property. Now they're the ones that are selling it with owner financing essentially, but you're going to generate the terms and the paperwork. It's just got to be negotiated. So you have to sell this idea to them so they understand what it means. I think the challenge we have is that the starting point of a negotiation is how much do you want for your property? I want market value, I want it in cash, and I want it now.
Right?
That's a starting point of a negotiation. Obviously, that does not lend itself to many options.
You could
And
have two of the three. Good, good, fast, and cheap.
so the question is, how do we get past that opening salvo to a more productive conversation?
Absolutely. Well, it's like anything, right? Well, any sales process, it's part persuasion, and part of that is building rapport and digging in and asking questions to find out, look, what does the client really want? You know, maybe they hadn't, well, in many cases, since we send unsolicited offers, they hadn't really thought about selling. Now their wheels are turning. And, sometimes we get that case of, wow, I don't know anything about this property. I haven't seen it in years. And I, I'm coming up a little bit short on that vacation money to take the grandkids to Disney World. And in that case, I need cash. But how much cash does that person need? I mean, let's just say, throw out some numbers. Let's say the property's worth on the sales side, let's say 50 grand. And you're so you're wanting to buy it for, let's say 15, at the most 20. And but you're not really sure, and that person, you've talked to them, you understood that they have this problem. They really need $5,000 right now, but they're not willing to sell the property that cheap. So maybe, and maybe they're not willing to sell it to you for 20, which is your strike price, your target strike price. But they're willing to sell it to you for 30, but you're not willing to buy it for 30. But if they gave you terms, so let's say their immediate need was a little bit of cash, $5,000. Okay, you need $5,000 to do that vacation. I can do that, and then I'll make you monthly payments on it for X amount of term. You control, as long as she's kind of getting the price, likes the monthly payment. You can negotiate that, and then in the meantime, you've got very little cash in, you've got very little risk, and you can go ahead and sell it either for cash and then pay off her note if you want to, or you could sell it on seller financing for more. You sell it for the 50 grand. You create a better note at higher interest, and you do what's called a wraparound mortgage. You take that note, that mortgage that you've given to your seller, and you're going to wrap that on top, and you're going to make a spread between the two notes. So that's one way to do it.
So I think when most people get into land, and not everybody, I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody here, but we get in there in those initial conversations. Some dig in and they try to build a rapport and find out what the situation is for the seller, and some don't. So there's always some of the standard questions like, how long have you owned the property? Have you ever seen the property? Why are you selling the property? But those are all they're still at a cursory level. We haven't like developed a relationship yet with
Mm-hmm.
the seller. And in order for this to work, and this is the critical aha moment, the first critical aha moment in this podcast, is that in order for this to work, we really need to understand what is the problem, the challenge that the seller is facing that they need to accomplish by selling this property. Maybe it's they need money. Maybe it's, as Dave said, maybe it's to take the grandkids to Disneyland. Maybe it's they've got a tax bill. Maybe they've got another property with a balloon payment coming up and they need to raise some cash for that. Or it could be much simpler than that. Maybe they just don't want to pay that tax bill anymore.
Bingo.
It could be a lot of things. Our job as land investors on the acquisition side is to dig in and find out what is the motivation of that person to sell. What is their problem? Because our job is to be a problem solver. Our job is to bring a solution that will work for them. And so their initial offer may simply be, I want market value, I want cash, and I want it now. But when you dig in and build that relationship, you find out that they actually do have a very specific need that's less than that. And you might be able to say, look, I can't do that, but let's get a little bit more creative and see if we can't solve your problem in a way that would work for you and work for me. Otherwise, we end up walking away. Nobody's problems are getting solved.
Right.
But that builds trust and rapport. It takes some time. It takes some commitment to work that relationship and to find out that information and to build that trust. That's the critical piece here.
And that's a great point too. I mean, building that trust just to get them to even listen. But most of these people, when you start talking about getting creative and seller financing, and these are people who aren't typically in real estate, have no idea what we're talking about. You got to build even more trust and rapport when you start hitting them with a creative solution. So there's a time in the process to do that, and in fact, it's almost advantageous to get it under contract first and then come back with them with the other process, so that you have established a good rapport and that they trust what you're saying. So now you go to explain things to them and teach them how this might work. You're going to have a better chance of success. And I'm glad you brought up taxes, because from the standpoint of them being stuck paying the property taxes, that's one thing. But another thing that most of them, there are some sellers that might be sitting on, more valuable properties. I mean, okay, 50 grand, there might be some capital gains, but maybe, some of these higher dollar properties, in the hundreds of thousands, if not in the seven figures, they're not in a position maybe that they need to sell, but they'd like to sell if they can get the right price, but they have a fear of paying capital gains taxes, and that's sort of why they're not selling it. Maybe just let it go to the grandchildren or to the children when they pass, because there's a certain rate up and the kids won't have that tax. But so there's a certain amount of money that you can make per year and not get taxed on it
There's a certain amount of capital gains you can make before the taxes kicks in.
Before the capital gains taxes kicks in, yes. And so spreading those payments out over years so they're underneath that threshold is something that a lot of people have never thought about.
Yeah.
And so it's a nugget to have in your sales toolbox when you're trying to persuade them to sell. And it's another part coming back to having that conversation to build rapport during the sales process.
Yeah, exactly. And in order to do this, it requires a heck of a lot of probing and listening and resisting that urge to offer a solution too quickly. Because what you might find in that process of probing is that there are certain things that they're absolutely fixed upon, and some things they may not be. We know, and the average person is, they don't really understand how amortization tables are built and the nuances of compound interest or whatever. They know that there are some inputs. They know there's an interest rate. They know there's a down payment. They know there's a term of the loan. But they don't necessarily have the tools or the knowledge to understand how that translates over time. We do, and that's an advantage to us. And we know that those are three. There's potentially more critical inputs into the evaluation. So interest rate, down payment, what's the payment going to be, what's the term of the loan, what's the amortization period, blah blah blah. And so you might learn that there's some things that for whatever reason they're absolutely fixed upon. If they say, if it turns out that they're absolutely fixed upon a down payment of a certain amount, that's a great indicator for more probing, because you really want to try to find out why that number is so important to them, because that's their true motivation. Other people, they may be completely fixed on the interest rate. It may be rational or it may be irrational, but it doesn't really matter too much so long as it's not completely unreasonable, because you can overcome an interest rate with term and with other ways of doing it. There's some ways to overcome that. But first, you have to find out, okay, what is flexible, what's not flexible. And once you do that, then you can plug everything in and kind of figure out a solution to the problem. But you don't want to do that too quickly and too prematurely until you understand what's driving them.
Yeah, got to understand their motivation so that you present a solution, not
Right.
a proposal, a solution to best meet their needs.
And I think that's really important. Finance is an interesting thing because deals can be structured that are very advantageous to us, and might even on the surface seem not so advantageous to the seller or the buyer in our case, depending on which side of the equation we're on. But put that to the side for a moment. Our job is obviously to maximize shareholder interest. We tend to be our own shareholders, and that's fine. So that's a fiduciary responsibility we have to ourselves. But we also have an obligation to the sellers and the buyers that we work with, and that is to solve their problem. And if we're buying a property at 20 cents on the dollar, that's not market rate. We're transparent about that. Some people, may say that's not fair. Well, it's fair if it actually is transparent and it solves a person's problem, and we give people enough respect to make their own decisions. Same thing here. Our job is to solve a problem for them, and we should feel confident that we're doing that. I apologize, my microphone just seemed to slip down a little bit. And that's what we need to be doing, solving their problem. So, okay. Let's see. So what are some ways we can structure this, Dave?
Well, again, you just coming back to figuring out what solution is going to be best for them. You can do, you can do structure to where, if they need a certain amount of cash, then you come up with a certain amount of down payment. If they don't, then maybe you make the terms a little bit more amicable to them. But you can, in many cases, I think if they just want a certain payment, you can do the structure so where they're getting that payment based on the term and the price, but your interest could effectively be zero.
In fact, if you're solving their problem by giving them enough money up front, they may be perfectly comfortable with zero interest rate.
Exactly. Exactly. And then, of course, you have the cascading type interest rates, but we won't get into that. It's
It's
opioid.
complicated. Yeah.
Um, there's also, just to talk about a deal example, I'll just hit it from a high level. Let's say you're doing a subdivide, and you got, let's say you're buying a 150-acre property, and it's free and clear, and the person needs a certain amount of money down, and but not nearly all of it, and they'll take the rest in payments. So you negotiate it so that you can split off part of that property, sell that for cash, and that covers your down payment. Pay yourself back on the down payment, and now you've got the rest of the property that you're able to split up and either sell for cash or sell on terms.
You need to
So
explain that. So you just said make your money back on the down payment.
so you're gonna so that person selling you the whole property needed a certain amount down. So
Let's just use easy numbers. So let's just say it was a $100,000 property and they
okay.
needed 20,000 down.
All right. So let's say it's $100,000 property and they needed 20,000 down. So we're buying it for 100,000. Let's say it's worth 3-4 times that by the maybe 5 times that by the time we split it up. Okay. So let's take a portion of that property and sell it for at least 20,000 immediately.
So if the property is $100,000, they need a $20,000 down payment. That means that they need 1/5 of the purchase price as a down payment. So what we can do is we can peel off 20% of the acreage separately. So that's kind of a subdivide out. We're buying that piece of land for $20,000. So that's a complete sale. We have complete deeded rights to that property. We go sell it for whatever profit we make. That covers the 20,000 and gives us probably more money than that. And then the rest of the note that we're paying on is for the remaining 80% of the acreage.
Correct. And so, yeah, I mean, hopefully you get enough for that, what you peel off to cover your down. And then if for subdividing the rest of it, you need to blade some roads and spend a little bit of money on it, then hopefully you can sell that piece to cover all that cash outlay. And then you're still muted, by the way.
Yeah.
Then now you've got this other parcel that you can split up and you own it free and clear. Well, actually, you don't own it free and clear. You have no cash out. You've got a note on the rest of it. So now you're going to basically sell this on an arbitrage, a nice arbitrage. So you've just done a creative deal. You've peeled part of the property off. You've received enough money to pay for the capital that you've put down on the deal and to do improvements to the rest of the property to get it subdivided and make a nice profit. But now you can either sell those for cash or sell them with a nice down payment and nice terms, and you basically have wraparound mortgages on each one.
And there are so many ways that you can structure this, right? So you can say we've already covered the down payment. You can say on the balance we'll have low monthly payments, and there'll be a balloon at the end at some point in order to keep your payments low. That way your out of pocket is low. You could even potentially say we're going to have so we'll have X number of payments, which will be interest only if you can get a negotiated good interest rate, and then the balloon at the end, all designed to basically keep your cash outlay low at the beginning. Then you go sell the property and you can keep making the payments and pocket the difference as your personal profit. So there's a lot of ways to structure it. We're not going to get into all of that today. I just want to sort of open your mind to the idea that you can do this, and it allows you to acquire properties, and even potentially expensive properties that you might have thought otherwise were beyond your reach. It's not simply a matter of, oh, the guy wants 150,000. I got to come up with 150,000 capital to buy that property. Not necessarily. Not
Yeah,
necessarily at all.
let the seller be the bank.
Yeah.
Let the seller be the bank. And I think this is a very important topic to understand. Just with the changing market, especially, we're going to have to get more creative in all kinds of deals, not just land.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By the way, this was the primary topic of conversation Tuesday night on the land.mba mastermind call, the Smart Bar. So if these are the kind of topics that are interesting to you, we would love to have you join us there. If you'd like to learn more about it, check out our website at land.mba or give David or I a call. We can talk a little bit more about it and how we might be able to get you involved in that. Because this is the kind of stuff we talk about. And then we will get into more details on specific structures and things like that. Let me ask you this question, Dave. If you're buying a property and you're using the seller as the bank, do you want a shorter term or do you want a longer term?
I'd always prefer a longer term on my buy side. It just gives me lots of flexibility. Um, it gives me the ability to do lots of things with the property with the buyers, and so you have a longer term with or without a balloon. Um, you're usually going to make a hell of a lot more on the property than you bought it for, whether it's on your terms or whatever. So just gives you the opportunity with a very low cash outlay and virtually no risk to turn that into something.
Absolutely. I mean, take that. It allows you to preserve your capital, reinvest it, and make it work for you. But the other thing is, at some point in time, oftentimes people just need cash. They need access to cash. We don't know when that's going to happen. We don't know why that's going to happen. We don't know if it's going to happen. But if you have a longer term, at some point it may happen that the person that's holding the note that you're paying on needs cash. And wouldn't that be a nice opportunity to go in and solve their problem by buying the note back from them at a discount, and thus paying even less for the property later on because you're solving an immediate need for them?
Yep. And again, typically the longer that term is, the more likely you're going to be able to buy that note at a discount down the road.
Absolutely. And hat tip to Eddie Speed of Note School for that idea. He is the man when it comes to a lot of this creative financing stuff. You can learn more about him in his program at land.mba/partners, our partner page on our website for more information on Note School with Eddie Speed.
Awesome. Well, I think we're just about out of time, and that was a great topic. Hope to talk more about it in the future.
Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time on the Land.mba podcast.
Adios.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, had a bit of fun, and walked away with some actionable insights that you can apply to your business. Dave and I have got some great content and interviews planned, so don't forget to rate and review, and of course subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. If we mention any interesting links or tools, you'll find them in the show notes. To learn more about land.mba, visit our website at, wait for it, land.mba. See you next time on the land.mba podcast.